Today, at Experts Class, mahalaga po ang ating usapan dahil tungkol ito sa pangangalaga sa ating kalusugang pangkaisipan o mental health. With us are two featured experts, an associate professor and occupational therapist from the University of the Philippines, Manila, and a mental health advocate, Dr. Michael C. We also have a nursologist and caring scholar from San Beda University, Dr. Rudolph Seymour Kirby Martinez. Also with us to provide critical insights are Dr. Evangeline B. De La Fuente, the Chair of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine of the UP College of Medicine. And of course, we have Dr. Ronel D. De La Rosa, the National President of the Filipino Mental Health and Psychiatric Nurses Society, Incorporated. I am Dr. Leslie Dalmasio. Welcome to Experts Class. Good morning and thanks for joining us. This is Experts Class, brought to you by the National Research Council of the Philippines. Each episode of Experts Class features an incisive look at an emerging field of research delivered by world-class experts of the National Research Council of the Philippines and bookended by a rich discussion among leading minds in the field and other stakeholders. Without further ado, let's listen to Dr. C and Dr. Martinez's presentation on taking care of one's mental health.
Alagaan ang iyong kalusugang pangkaisipan. Good day everyone, I am Dr. Michael C., an Associate Professor at the University of the Philippines, Manila, and a mental health advocate.
I am Dr. Rudolph Seymour Kirby P. Martinez, a nursologist and a caring scholar from San Beda University College of Nursing, and also a mental health professional.
Welcome to this month's Experts Class entitled Alagaan ang iyong kalusugang pangkaisipan.
Dr. C, our expert class topic is about mental health, right? I am sure that our viewers will see this topic as very relevant and timely as well. Can you tell us more about what we will be exploring for today?
What is mental health? According to the World Health Organization and the Mental Health Law of 2018, mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes one's own abilities and potentials, copes adequately with the normal stresses of life, displays resilience in the face of extreme life events, works productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a positive contribution to the community. In Filipino, mental health is called kalusugang pangkaisipan. But what about well-being? Well-being is a positive outcome that is meaningful for people and for many sectors of society because it tells that people perceive that their lives are going well. In Filipino, well-being means kaginhawahan. In this experts class, we will try to illuminate answers to this central question. What role can the government play in promoting mental health and wellness, preventing mental health concerns in the community, and ensuring that mental health issues are detected early and properly treated? But before we provide our proposed solutions and answers, let us first be updated on some statistics and data that give us an overview of the mental health landscape in the Philippines. First, mental health is not a new research area because it has been studied in the past 45 years according to Hernandez Torano et al. In 2020. Worldwide, the WHO estimates that 154 million people suffer from depression, 1 million from schizophrenia, and 15.3 million from substance use disorders, while 877,000 die due to suicide every year, according to the Department of Health. Mental illness remains to be the third most common disability in the Philippines, wherein more than 3.6 million Filipinos suffer from at least one kind of mental, neurological, or substance use disorder. We have the third highest rate of mental disorder in the Western Pacific region, according to Martinez et al. In 2020. Also, compounding concerns on people's mental health issues today are poor awareness, social stigma, injustices, pressure from social media, and lack of professionals who can help. And for your information, did you know that according to the World Health Organization, people around the world only spend $0.25 to $2 or roughly 20 to 120 pesos per year on their mental health? This costs the same as our favorite cup of coffee. So if we can buy and drink our coffee every day, don't you think it's wise to also spend for your mental health every day? Due to its relevance and prevalence, especially during and after the pandemic, mental health will remain to be a concern of not only individuals but the Filipino society as a whole. In this light, it is important for us to recognize that RA 11036 or the Mental Health Act has been passed in 2018. This signifies a pivotal step of the government to acknowledge the existence of mental health problems among Filipinos, thereby providing authority for experts, public servants, and community workers to initiate the following actions. Key Solution 1. Promote mental health and well-being of all Filipinos through education, formative activities, and access to the right and relevant information. Key Solution 2. Prevent mental health concerns of those at risk through early detection, as well as access to basic mental health services and social support. Key Solution 3. Intervene for those who have identified mental, emotional, or behavioral disorders through accessible and comprehensive care and secured follow-up and community reintegration.
Now that we have identified some key issues on mental health, both from individual and societal perspective, it is important for us to equally highlight solutions and strategies to support the mental health and overall well-being of Filipinos. From what we have gathered, solution for mental health concern and issue is not one size fits all. We have to recognize that persons are unpredictable and unique, such that we experience and respond to life challenges very differently. With this, we are proposing solutions that are based on a public health approach to mental health, composed of promotion, prevention, and intervention. Our first proposed solution is the promotion of mental health and well-being for all Filipinos. This means that we should not only be concerned about individuals who are already identified to have mental health condition, but also those who are seemingly well at the moment. At this level, promoting strategies includes the following. Number 1, education about mental health in academic and work setting. The key to removing stigma about mental health and promoting overall wellness is anchored on proper, timely, and relevant education. Discussion on mental health should start early, preferably in basic education, and it must continue up in the workplace setting. The content and focus of educational materials needs to be reflective of the need of their specific community in a language that they understand, which may be delivered through the use of technology. Number 2, encouragement of formative activities. Since mental health is an expression of a person's wellness, formative activities which develop the person's sense of resilience and grit needs to be emphasized as well. These activities may include developing hobbies, having a work-life balance, participating in leisure and recreational activity, and other social engagement. And since each person is unique, activities that provide personal meaning will vary from one individual to another. The key here is continuously developing a well-balanced and meaningful way of living. Number 3, access to right and relevant information. Fact-based information about mental health is vital in the promotion of persons' wellness. We propose a fact-based information including who to contact, where to go, and what to do to promote mental health, it must be curated and provided to the public through various media such as television, radio, and social media. This information must also be present in public spaces to make it accessible to those who might need it. Let us be mindful that having a mental health concern may not be a morality or religious issue, but rather a health concern that needs to be medically addressed. In summary, the first solution includes the promotion of mental health and well-being through education, formative activities, and access to fact-based information. The next solution is more concerned about the prevention of mental health concerns, especially to individuals who are at risk. Who are these people at risk? One thing that we need to remember is that all people can be at risk in terms of developing mental health concerns, but there are those who possesses greater risk because of the presence of one or more of the following 4 triggers, including developmental, such as entry to adolescence, situational, like a sudden breakup or death of a loved one, health and illness, such as being diagnosed with a disease or having an addiction problem, and organizational, like the presence of unbearable stress in the workplace. How the person reacts and gives meaning to this life situation is influenced by their genetic history and societal upbringing. Not all persons will react the same way even to similar life situation, and each life situation is unique on its own and is mostly unpredictable. If you are at risk or you know someone who is, then we need to activate key solution number 2, prevent mental health concerns through early detection as well as access to basic mental health services and support system. Preventive measures includes the following strategies. Number 1, early detection of mental health concern. Early detection includes access to consultation with the mental health professionals such as with a physician, psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, or a nurse in school, workplace, or community setting. This can be made possible by empowering existing community-based clinic to offer basic mental health services or through developing distant consultation systems such as telehealth. The telehealth consult is one of the safe ways to speak with a professional who can provide screening and appropriate referral to prevent further development of mental health concern. Key to early detection is knowing when to refer appropriately. Thus, there is a need to train even non-healthcare professionals, especially the teachers, on proper identification of red flag, such as an abrupt and noticeable change in the usual pattern of the person, like a sudden change in behavior or unexplained social withdrawal. Number 2, access to basic mental health services. Not all mental health concerns needs hospitalization nor needs medication. Some, if addressed early, can be managed by other forms of non-medical therapies, such as but not limited to counseling, stress management, and psychological first aid. For this to occur, healthcare professionals must be trained in this specific skill set as part of their education, and these services must be offered where the person might need them when they need them the most. Luckily, some of their services are now available online, but still, we lack mental health professionals to provide these services. Number 3, promotion of family and social support. Along with professional help, prevention will be maximized when mental health education and support are extended to the family and friends of the person with mental health condition. Strengthening the support system is one way to build the person's sense of resiliency so that early detection and intervention can be facilitated. Remember, it takes the community to care for a person with mental health concern. In summary, the second proposed solution includes the early detection of mental health concern, access to basic mental health services, and promotion of family and social support. We need to remember that each encounter with a person is always unique. That is why we need to be able to identify the red flags as early as possible and provide basic mental health services when needed. The last solution focuses on intensive intervention for people who are already identified to have mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders requiring immediate attention.
Intensive intervention is usually provided in hospitals and mental health institutions, both in the private and public sectors. Usually, people who are availing of these services are given clinical diagnoses and may either require hospitalization or outpatient visits for a certain period of time until the person stabilizes and self-regulates. At this stage, intensive intervention will require comprehensive care by healthcare professionals who are specialized in mental and psychiatric care. Interventions will involve taking medications, therapies, and family interventions. The following strategies must be employed to achieve comprehensive mental health interventions. Number 1. Access to medication and pharmacy counseling. We know that people who have mental health conditions need maintenance medication as part of treatment. However, these medications tend to be unaffordable or inaccessible, resulting to poor compliance. We also need to highlight the importance of pharmacy counseling as a statutory service provided for mental health clients. This will let them know the what, when, why, and how of taking in medications, side effects, and how to manage them. Number 2. Interprofessional and collaborative care. Having a mental health condition is perceived to be an invisible disability, but is not necessarily simple and straightforward. People with mental health conditions will require an interprofessional team composed of a psychiatrist, nurses, therapists, and social workers, among others, to ensure a comprehensive care plan from hospitalization to discharge to community reintegration. Collaborative care will also happen when the family and social support of the person under care are integrated within the intervention. Number 3. Access to mental health services at the primary level of care. From a community perspective, I think it is but timely and pivotal that the government provide competent health and social care workers who are stationed as mental health care providers and supporters from the community and barangay levels. An easier access to mental health services will encourage more people to seek help rather than hide their illness. While this may require funds and maneuvering of bureaucracies, we believe that accessing mental health services straight from the community will create long-term ripple effects, especially in a post-pandemic society. In summary, the last proposed solution includes access to medication and pharmacy counseling, interprofessional and collaborative care, and access to mental health services at the primary level of care.
Although COVID-19 cases are going down, the critical reality of mental health concerns still linger. As we end this session, we would like to emphasize that maintaining our mental health and overall well-being is our personal responsibility and part of our social responsibility to one another. Anyone can have mental health concerns at any point of their life because of certain circumstances, but not all mental health concerns require hospitalization. That is why we need to always remember the 3 levels of how we can take care of our mental health: promotion, prevention, and intensive intervention.
The first key solution includes the promotion of mental health and well-being through education about mental health and wellness, activities at home, at work, and in the community, and access to fact-based information. The second key solution includes the early detection of mental health concerns, access to basic mental health services, and promotion of family and social support. And the last proposed solution includes access to medication and pharmacy counseling, interprofessional and collaborative care, and access to mental health services at the primary level of care. If you are experiencing mental health concerns, or if you know anyone who does, we ask you to remember our 3 proposed key solutions. Before responding, it is important that we keep our biases to ourselves and remember that many people are currently experiencing mental health concerns. Mental health is a complex health issue that needs to be attended to and not neglected. Hence, We urge our viewers to share what you've learned today with your colleagues and family members so that you can practice how to be sensitive and responsive when you are faced with mental health concerns.
We also call on our policymaker on the following realities. Number 1, there might be a need to revisit and update the mental health law. Number 2, there is an urgency to train more mental health professionals and workers. And number 3, there is a need to infuse more budget into the mental health program, training of professionals, and creating accessible and self-reliant community-based facilities that offer mental health services.
We hope that you've learned something new today in our experts class. Until we meet again,
On behalf of the DOST and our CP Medical Science Division, I am Dr. Rudolph Seymour Kirby P. Martinez.
and I am Dr. Michael C. Alagaan ang iyong kalusugang pangkaisipan.
Ayan, napakagandang usapin ngayong umaga. Very timely din po dahil sa mga recent na mga kaganapan sa ating bansa. Alagaan ang ating kalusugang pangkaisipan. So, with me now are our featured experts, Dr. Michael C. and Dr. Kirby Martinez, and our reactors, Dr. Evangeline de la Fuente and Dr. Ronel de la Rosa. So while we are waiting for questions from our viewers, siguro magtatanong na muna ako sa ating mga experts. Sa recent na mga kaganapan sa ating bansa, nakita natin na nagkaroon ng mga issue na related sa kalusugang pangkaisipan. Marami lalo sa ating mga kabataan. So, ano kaya ang magandang immediate na intervention sa mga nangyari nitong nakaraang linggo lang sa marami sa ating mga kabataan dito sa bansa? Dr. C o Dr. Martinez?
Shall I go first po? Sige, ako na lang muna yung sasagot. Maraming salamat for that question, Dr. Dalmasio. Totoo yan. Marami sa atin, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga kabataan, ang nakaranas ng isang parang mga mental health concerns regarding the recent elections. Hindi lang yun even the crises that we are all experiencing, whether it's climate change or yung mga personal issues nila. But I think siguro masasabi nating na-trigger ito nung recently concluded election. Okay, I think ang pinaka-immediate na pwede nating gawin, since ang mga kabataan naman natin ngayon ay nasa eskwelahan, is really to first have them undergo a debriefing process or sort of a processing, whether in their class or whether it be an extracurricular activity provided by the Unit for Guidance and Counseling, if they have that in their universities, which I'm sure they have. And I think that kind of processing can help them. However, hindi kasi lahat ng individual or mga kabataan are comfortable in yung masyadong malakihang processing. So what I try to do, because yung iba gusto nila mag-express pero they don't want to express themselves in a big group. So ang ginawa ko is nagkaroon ako ng opportunity in one of my small classes composed of I think 10 to 12 people. At ako ay Miro board sa kanila, parang virtual freedom wall. And I asked them to, kasi nga yung iba hindi din naman nila kayang i-verbalize yung kanilang nararamdaman. So I asked them to write them down. And so it's a virtual Miro board, so synchronous yun. Lahat sila nakikita nila ang sinusulat ng kani-kanilang mga kaklase synchronously, so real time ito. Tapos anonymous, hindi alam kung sino yung nagsusulat, no? And I think it really helped. Binasa namin isa-isa yung mga sinulat nila at ito ay sinubukan naming intindihin, unawain. Inalaw ko din yung iba kong mga estudyante na kung gusto nilang magsalita, pwede din. But then again, providing them with different medium or iba't ibang pamamaraan ng pag-express, I think that is an immediate strategy that we can do. Dr. Martinez, baka meron kang gustong idagdag.
Okay. Again, that's a very interesting question and very timely as well. So, for my side, I'm speaking from the perspective of neurology and caring science. We need to be mindful that how we react to what has happened is perfectly normal. You are still normal. You do not have any concern. No need to be hospitalized. No need to be medicated. And what we need to remember is that these reactions, these feelings that we have at the moment, it will die down soon in time. So, kailangan tayong maging reflective on the idea that we need not do something permanent to something that is very transient in nature. Our reaction, our feelings, our emotions at the moment, these are transient. So do not do something that will have an everlasting effect on you as a person to these things na hindi naman siya permanent. And what we need to understand again is empowerment always starts with the self. And you need to understand that there is a process by which a person will come to a point that there is acceptance of really what has happened. And after this acceptance, dun pa lang tayo makaka-focus sa present at makaka-move on to the future. How each person will come to that realization and to the point of acceptance is very much on their own. But there are some things that might help the person to actually be at that situation na meron na siyang sense of acceptance. One thing that I would suggest, it might not be applicable to all, but I would suggest if you find something is toxic, you try to detach away from it. Even though it is very difficult for you to detach, for example, social media, you might need to detach yourself for you to be able not to be consumed by your emotion that is attached to the social media. In caring science, we always say that we need to be mindful of all the things that are happening to us. Because focusing too much on the past will bring you regret. Focusing too much on the future will bring you anxiety. But focusing on the present tends to bring you peace. So that is one of the varied ways on how we can actually make sense of what is happening. But again, it is very personal.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. C and Dr. Martinez. Napakaganda nung nabanggit ni Dr. Martinez. Empowerment comes from yourself. Ang ganda nun. Parang nakaka-encourage talaga. Especially kung meron tayong mga pinagdadaanan. And sabi nga ni Dr. Martinez, minsan ang ating nararamdaman ay normal lamang. So, hindi tayo dapat mag-alala. Let us empower ourselves, detach ourselves from what causes the problem in ourselves. So to our Zoom viewers, please type your questions in the chat box and we'll read it on air. Now we would like to hear from our reactors. Perhaps we can start with Dr. De La Fuente.
Hi. Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. Now for a reaction, I would like to commend Dr. C and Dr. Martinez for their comprehensive and cohesive presentation. So I would like to emphasize their messages. What I gathered was they were sharing with us that, well, this is my paraphrasing, that mental health is a very dynamic concept. It is not simple black and white. Mental health can vary from day to day, and people will have different mental health needs from day to day. Therefore, the manner of addressing it is not static also. It can vary, so it doesn't just require treatment. And even treatment is a range. It's not only medical. It ranges from non-medical to medical, and they mentioned a variety. So I say that it is a range, and not just in the therapeutic aspect, there is also the promotive and preventive aspect. So they discuss those very well. Now, who to consult with? The people. They also enumerated a number of people. Hindi lang po psychiatrist or psychologist. Nandyan din po ang nurse, nandyan din po ang occupational therapist, ang social worker. Nandyan din po ang mga nasa paligid natin, ang community, the members of the community. Kasi nagva-vary nga rin naman po ng gravity ng ating nararamdaman. Maganda po, like kahit konti pa lang yung nararamdaman, nakikipagkapanayam. Hindi konsultasyon ang unang step. Okay? So I just wanted to recap what I heard them say, and that's what I heard them say. Mental health concerns are varied, and you have to address promotion, prevention, and treatment. And what I'd particularly like to emphasize in that they said anyone can have a mental health concern, I would say that the important thing to remember, for me, if there's one thing you should remember from today, it is that much can be gained by being more open to having conversations about mental health. Okay? With a supportive social network. Kasi when I was listening to Dr. C and Dr. Martinez, ang dami nilang ideas na shinare, 'di ba? Kung hindi ka nagno-notes, maaalala mo kaya. So kung isa lang ang maaalala mo, ito ay makipag-usap, makipagkapanayam in a safe, supportive network. Dr. C mentioned, let's try to be mindful of our biases. Pero I would suggest, pag-usapan natin ito in a supportive network para tayo ay magkalinawan, magkaintindihan. So, for now, yan lang po ang aking masasabi. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Dr. De La Fuente. Ngayon naman po, let us hear from Dr. De La Rosa.
Good morning to all, and thank you very much for this opportunity. And technically hearing Dr. C and Dr. Martinez, I personally, able to understand the social support network system that Dr. De La Fuente is reiterating to. And indeed, in our association, because I'm representing the psychiatric nurses in the Philippines, Filipino Mental Health Psychiatric Nurses Society, I was able to learn as well some key points in the discussions. Una, I appreciate the fact that the two experts recognize that there is really indeed lack of professional services or either manpower. Though in the Duterte's government, maraming naging available na plantilla for nurses in particular to strongly implement various mental health programs. And I would like also to recognize the key point from the two experts that when they reiterated that, we already have an existing mental health act or law, but still this law remain many challenges. In fact, the provision of accessibility and affordability for the healthcare services, mental health care services. But I believe because of the Universal Healthcare Act, there are local government now shifting to service delivery network, and it will be an easier mechanism now to access mental health services. I love also for Dr. Martinez reiterating the role of interprofessional scheme, and as nurses, the interprofessional education will be also enlightened the way we do our interprofessional caring skills. And it's also I would like also to zero in some of the insights given by the two experts about the prioritization of what mental health program services can be rendered or can be given or offered to our constituents. And I would like to believe that it will be always the prerogative of the governance of the LGU what particular agenda or implementation they could be having in terms of mental health. Like for example, for the mental health gap, not all LGUs are adopting the framework of mental health intervention guide to address some mental health state and concerns in the community, considering also that mental health remains poorly sourced in terms of budget. We know that. So I would like also to reiterate that based on the discussions, that despite that we have an expansion of services among our mental health facilities, still lacking. And during our 2016 national convention in our association, one of the experts there reiterated that there is only 0.91% out of 100,000 population for nurses, availability of nurses who will be taking care of these individuals. And that is really a sad reality, knowing that we produce nurses and we nurse the world. And nurses prefer to go abroad or to be migrated. So in that sense, I think increasing investment on mental health programs and services are I think, becoming evident. But in terms of training and recruitment of manpower like psychiatrists, we know also that we lack of psychiatrists in the practice, in the government practice, because majority of them are in the private professional practice, and other collaborative professionals that will engage particularly this, what Dr. De La Puente reiterated, social support network system. And I believe with that, same as also with our association, we strongly advocate interprofessional education and caring, including also research works, and definitely community-based partnership to strongly implement our purpose in the Association of Nurses. But at the end of the day, for future nurses, student nurses, and nurses in the academy and practice, I believe there is a need for them to be given more opportunities to be well-trained in the different programs, especially in the midst of COVID-19. And we know the fact that we are in need of more trainings and immersion on managing public health emergencies vis-a-vis mental health. So with that, hopefully, we could be able to be with you all to fight and promote this mental health in a more responsive social support network system.
Okay.
So, before now, thank you po.
Okay, thank you, Dr. De La Rosa. We can now have our open forum, or we can now have a further discussion with our experts and our reactors. So one of the questions that we received is about the mental health law of 2018. So one of the recommendations given by our experts is to revisit the mental health law of 2018. So one of our viewers is asking if our experts can be more specific about this revisit recommendation by providing the provision that should be revisited and providing the reason for suggesting the revisit. Dr. Martinez or Dr. C, would you like to answer the question?
I would be answering this one because I was the one who actually placed it in the lecture. Now, for this one, actually it's a standard SOP to actually revisit laws and revisit the pertinent aspect of the law if there has been changes in the society. For example, now that we have the realities of COVID has come, some of the provisions may not be that applicable at the current moment. Specifically, I'm looking at it as an academic. Again, I'm looking at it as an academic. I am not privy to information that are not publicly available. So let's be specific with section number 23, the integration of mental health law into the educational system. That is under Republic Act 11036. In letter B, it states there that the state shall ensure the integration of mental health into the educational system as follows. And in letter B, it made mention there psychiatry and neurology shall be required subject in all medical and allied courses, including postgraduate courses in health. Now, there is nothing wrong with that one, but the focus here seems to be disciplinary in nature rather than professional. When we talk about integrating something in the curriculum, that integration should somehow have an immediate effect on the skill set of the professional who will be expressing this skill set in their practice. That is their profession. So instead of really focusing on psychiatry and neurology, why not add or refocus on integration of skill set rather than disciplinary courses? So rather than be an expert in a 3-unit psychiatry introduction to psychiatry, why not focus on skill set and certification on psychological first aid, on mental health and psychosocial support, on basic crisis management. These things can be directly put up and utilized by the professional when they graduate rather than the 3-unit academic course of psychiatry and neurology.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Martinez. Perhaps the next question can be answered by Dr. C. The second question is, how can researchers contribute in maneuvering bureaucracy to make mental health services accessible?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dalmasio, for that question. I think as a researcher myself, I think it is very important not to just focus on the process of collecting data, analyzing them, and publishing them. What is important for researchers to remember is to really communicate and disseminate the results after the research is completed. Kasi otherwise, if the research that we do on mental health remains in the university, napakakaunti ng makakaalam ng landscape ng mental health sa ating bansa. It is important also to know about local data. Kasi ang nakikita natin na data kadalasan galing sa ibang bansa, at kung sa social media kayo tumitingin, malamang galing sa ibang bansa yun. So having the capacity and also the intentionality of communicating our data, our research data, to the public, and that requires communication. So paano ba natin ito mako-communicate bilang researchers? Hindi lang po sa pagpe-present sa mga forum or conferences, but really yung data po ay gagawin nating kwento in forms of films. It can be in forms of short stories. It can be in forms of children's books or even infographics na nasa iba't ibang lingwahe o wika. Sa pamamagitan ng ganitong pagko-communicate, mas marami po tayong marireach out at mas magkakaroon po tayo ng impact as researchers sa ating lipunan. Yun po ang aking sagot doon, Dr. Dalmasio.
Maraming salamat, Dr. C. Gusto ko rin pong malaman kung may gustong idagdag si Dr. De La Fuente o si Dr. De La Rosa. Ang ating pong tanong ay, how can researchers contribute in maneuvering bureaucracy to make mental health services accessible?
My contribution to this is, in my understanding, the work of research is to gather evidence. Therefore, if you focus on evidence-based recommendations, then that will address the justification for certain changes that you may want to implement. So researchers should target intentionally which aspect that they want change in, whether it is in promotion, prevention, or treatment. So it has to really be intentional and targeted rather than isolated, fragmented. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. De La Fuente. Ang ganda. Oo nga naman. Dapat evidence-based. Dr. De La Rosa, may idadagdag po ba kayo?
Yes, ma'am. In addition to that, researchers may respond to the mental health research agenda, issued by the DOST-PCHRD, to collaboratively address the needs and concerns on mental health in different aspects and dimensions. I think that will be helpful if researchers are doing their works as articulated and aligned to the needs of our clientele. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Maraming salamat po, Dr. De La Rosa. The next question, I think, can be answered by any one of our experts and reactors. The question is, what are specific action points that we can do to help lessen the stigma on mental health?
Can I answer that one?
Go ahead, Dr. Martinez.
Okay. Now, what we need to understand is that one of the essence of stigma is actually the idea that the other person who have mental health concern is different from us. So that is why we label them, and that is why we stigmatize them, because they are different from us, which we considered normal. Of course, we always consider ourselves normal, and the rest is not that normal. So that is where the stigma come from. And this idea, this perspective is often rooted in our lack of exposure or sometimes lack of education to the realities at the ground. So if that is the case, if the case is it is rooted in the lack of exposure and education, the action to simply answer for this one is rooted again on timely, relevant, and continuous education. Okay? We need to continuously educate people, and we need to have discourse on the realities of mental health, that not everything needs to be hospitalized, that it is okay to be not okay, and your feelings are not you. They are transient things that will come and go. So for this specific, one needs to remember that really I cannot pinpoint specifics, because when we talk about solutions are always context sensitive. So action point should always emanate from the realities of the community where it is intended to be utilized. For example, what is the cause of stigma? For example, let's talk about stigma of mental health in Siquijor, stigma of mental health in the prison system. All of them will have different realities. So kung ano yung specific action point, I cannot really pinpoint because there are different realities. So all of the actions, for it to become effective and efficient, it must emanate from the realities of that community. But again, it is always rooted on timely, relevant, and continuous education.
Salamat, Dr. Martinez. Meron po bang gustong magdagdag ng sagot sa ating mga from our panel?
Maybe I can help
Yes.
add to the discussion. Dr. Kirby gave us a bird's eye view perspective na dapat daw i-konteksto. So, lalagyan ko ng particular context. My particular interest is mental health in the workplace. And my workplace happens to be a health institution. So, I like that where I work, the Human Resource Division is currently conducting seminars on mental health in the workplace. So, merong mga eksaktong venue na pinag-uusapan ang mental health. So that's how I would suggest we can address stigma. In where we work, we should have actions in place that we will be giving opportunities to talk about it, to address it. Kasi yung topic lang na mental health in the workplace, nakakatuwa siyang tingnan. Pati yung workplace design, pag-uusapan ninyo, yung schedule ng trabaho, yung how is this impacting on your mental health? Bale, meron siyang practical application para ma-anchor mo that the concern for mental health is real. And where you work, who you work with, the way you do your work, you can tailor fit it to help promote mental health in yourself and in people around you. So, thank you. I hope that helps.
Yes, salamat, Dr. De La Fuente, na contextualize niyo po, napalinaw niyo po sa amin yung sinabi ni Dr. Martinez. Perhaps we can go to the next question. How can we encourage the people around us that it's okay to be vulnerable and to need help? Related pa rin to siguro dun sa stigma question eh. But now the question is, how can we encourage the people around us that it's okay to be vulnerable and to need help? Anyone from our panel?
Maybe I can start.
Yes, Dr. De La Fuente.
All right. So I think, as the speakers have said, it begins in each one of us. I ask all of you who are listening, how comfortable are you talking about your mental health? Kasi that will signal to the people you're talking with to be comfortable also. 'Di ba? So ako bilang mental health professional, I'm very in touch with how I feel. Okay? In any forum, hindi ako nagpipigil. Pag may tinanong sa akin, oh my gosh, nasa-stress ako sa tinatanong mo. I'm very in touch and it's important to be able to describe. Hindi pwedeng, okay, we're always told, it's okay to not be okay. Pero kahit sino tanungin mo, kamusta ka? Alam mo ang sagot? Okay lang, utang na loob. O sige, so umpisahan natin sa bokabularyo. Okay? So gusto ninyo mag-usap-usap tayo or mabuwag ang stigma. Expand natin ang vocabulary natin, yung feelings mo. If you're okay, what kind of okay? Are you excited? Are you optimistic? And then if you're not okay, what are you? Do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel tense, afraid? Meron ka bang visceral reaction? Pag ikaw ba'y na-anxious, para ka bang naduduwal? So, mag-umpisa ka sa sarili mo. Tapos, find people that you feel comfortable with and start the conversation. Hindi ko naman sinasabing, just anywhere. Kasi ayaw mo namang mapaso. If you start with people who are not, people you're comfortable with, kung sagutin ka ng, ang OA mo naman, ang epal mo naman, diba parang, hindi mali yung pag-share mo. Mali yung assessment mo kung kanino ka nag-share. Parang yun yung masasabi ko. Kasi, readiness rin is important. The person you're sharing with, imposibleng wala siyang emosyon. Okay? Pero hindi pa lang siguro siya handa. So yun ang aking masasabi. Begin with yourself and try to hone your assessment skills and respect the readiness of everyone. We cannot, even if it's important to us, we cannot expect it to be important to the same degree to another person. Thank you.
Salamat, Dr. De La Fuente. Yes.
May I add something?
Yes, Dr. Martinez.
So the question reads, how can we encourage the people around us that it's okay not to be okay and it is okay to ask for help? Now, again, as I have mentioned kanina, empowerment, for it to be effective, must come from the individual, from the person themselves. So much of what we can do is actually promote a milieu where empowerment can happen. Kagaya nga ng sabi kanina ng ating reactor, one of the process by which we can promote that milieu where empowerment can happen is actually letting the individual who you think may have mental health concern know that it is okay to open up and that you are there in case that individual wants to open up. We must be sensitive to the reality that it is the person with mental health concern that must be the one to accept the reality that it is not okay. Because if that person do not accept the reality that it is not okay, hindi siya magka-come forward. You really need the person to come forward na meron na siyang acceptance na I am vulnerable and I might be needing help for the moment. But one thing that adds to the complication is actually the Filipino concept of hiya. When I'm talking about the Filipino concept of hiya, much of the Filipino do not want to feel like they are a burden to the other person. So instead of going toward the other person to tell that other person that I'm not feeling okay, I'm feeling vulnerable, I might need help, hindi na nila gagawin because they do not want to burden the other person and just keep it to themselves. Especially, hiya is very, very much prominent in our idea of toxic masculinity, especially among the males. Most adolescent male will not actually go to a fellow male and tell I'm vulnerable. You rarely see that unless of course that person is in touch with himself. So those are some of the complicating things that we have as a nation, as the Filipino nation, yung concept natin ng hiya. So isa siya sa kailangan din nating i-address. I'm not saying that we should eradicate hiya. No, that is our cultural concept. It is within us. We cannot erase that one. But we must be sensitive to the idea that maybe this person wants to actually verbalize, but because of hiya, he is not approaching me. So I can actually somehow ask them directly, is there anything that you would like to tell me? That is me actually reaching out. And if that person is ready, that person will reach back. So it is a two-way process. Again, you being aware of your limitations and your skill set na pwede ba akong magbigay ng crisis intervention, ng psychological first aid. Hindi ko na to kaya, kailangan ko na siyang i-refer. Kung kailangan ko siyang i-refer, nasaan ko siya pwedeng i-refer. Kasi sometimes, yung tao na gustong tumulong, hindi na sila tumutulong simply because pag hindi nila kaya, hindi na nila alam ang gagawin kung saan i-refer. Because the data is not with us. For example, may isang teacher nakita yung isang bata na depressed, wala naman silang counselor, kanina na siya i-refer kung wala siyang access to informations kung saan pwedeng i-refer yung tao. So yun yung isa sa in-emphasize namin dun sa talk, that fact-based information needs to be constantly present in social media or conspicuous places na makikita ng mga tao na kailangan nila, na baka kailangan nila.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Martinez. I think the next question is related to the previous question because the next question goes, is the Filipino penchant for smiling during crisis situations hiding mental health problems?
Okay, can I give my opinion? This is a purely opinion. I'm speaking again as from the perspective of anthropology and caring science. So the Filipino penchant for smiling, does it hide mental health? Actually, it does not hide anything. We smile because we want to smile. It is an expression of our at the moment emotion. So baka the question wants to pinpoint that Filipinos smile a lot. Does it mean that they are hiding something that should be expressed outside? Now, one really cannot tell. Maybe that person is smiling because at the back of the mind of that person is the reality that after this one, I can move on, because that is one of the reality of Filipinos. We are very much resilient because we know that after crisis, we will have another point na hindi na siya crisis. Then crisis, then hindi na siya crisis. Kaya we tend to always smile, and it does not actually reflect na hinahide natin ang something na mental health concern. Kasi baka mamaya, pag yun yung pananaw nyo, lahat na makita nyong tumatawa, unless of course sabihin nila na I'm just smiling but deep inside I'm hurting, then that's a pinpoint that there might be something wrong. But you do not assume that this person, for example, has undergone crisis and that person is smiling. Maybe that is part of the grieving process of that person. Maybe it's okay for that person. You allow the person to grieve. And if the process of grieving for that person is to smile, then let that person be.
Okay. So, may gusto po bang idagdag ang ating mga experts, ang ating panel? Dr. De La Fuente?
Hi, may I? So I have two comments to that. When we smile, there's a biological basis that says na when we smile, the rest of our brain gives a signal to the rest of our body that everything is okay. I mean, sige, that there's something to smile about. I hope that's something you can relate with. So even if you're feeling bad, when you smile, it starts a reaction in your brain to calm you, to make you feel good. So it has an adaptive value to smile. So it's a good response. Number two, I think it also speaks when Filipinos smile, even in a crisis, I think it speaks about our social centricity. Kasi usually naman, pag ngumiti ka, may kaharap ka at may nginitian ka. Diba? Hindi ka naman mag-isa sa lugar mo at may nangyaring masama sa'yo at ngingiti ka. Hindi ganon. May audience ang ngiti mo. So yung ngiti mo, para sa sarili mo at para sa nakakakita sa'yo. So it adds to the sense of community and support. So I think the strength of Filipinos derives from that also. We like being together, 'di ba? We like talking with each other. That is our culture. So I think the smile is not a way of hiding anything. It is how we are. It is part of our resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. De La Fuente. It's part of our resilience. Smiling is part of our resilience. What a good message, a good takeaway. Meron pa po tayong mga ibang mga tanong at komento. Ngayon po, pumunta naman tayo sa mga komento from our audience. One of the comments goes, I encourage other practitioners to provide free psychoeducation intervention as it is the mandate of the practitioners. I think Dr. Ronel De La Rosa can react to that comment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Indeed, I rejoined this comment because I believe most of the helping hand professionals that I know, they do. I mean, they offer their services. I mean, for free, just to promote also mental health. And part of this is expanding the knowledge on psychoeducational interventions. And in our association, we are also promoting mental health gap intervention guide, especially now that the MH gap is an intervention program created by the WHO and being adopted by the DOH, Philippine DOH, in translating it and localizing it in different vernacular versions of each region. So now that the intervention guide, the mental health gap, has its version, a mobile application version 2.0, I think it will reach more target clientele. And part and parcel of implementing the GAP, the intervention guide rather, is to promote also psychoeducation. So I believe we are already doing that, but we still need to intensify the different strategies in implementing psychoeducational interventions. And I think one of that is mindfulness, especially nowadays. Kaliwat kanan na webinars, seminars, you've been hearing about mindfulness. But I would like also to highlight that for you to really implement psychoeducational interventions, it will be helpful also if you are promoting self-awareness, like what Dr. Martinez and Dr. De La Fuente reiterated. At the end of the day, it's okay not to be okay, but it's important also that you know what's inside of this phenomenon of getting self-aware. Thank you, ma'am. That will be all for now.
Salamat, Dr. De La Rosa. Ipagpatuloy natin yung diskusyon dun sa mindfulness. May isa pa po kasi tayong komento suggesting to infuse mindfulness into the school curricula or any workplace. Baka Dr. Michael C. can give a reaction to that comment.
Thank you very much po for that comment. I think nabanggit na rin kanina that one of the strategies that are being used largely today is yung sinasabing mindfulness. But I would like to respond to this comment by first asking ourselves, ano nga ba ang mindfulness? Okay? Kasi ang tanong is suggestion to infuse mindfulness in the school and in the workplace. But it is important first for us to know ano nga ba ang ibig sabihin ng mindfulness. Marami kasing ibig sabihin yan. Parang mental health, napakalawak po niya. It can be, sinasabi nila mindfulness is a form of meditation, it involves breathing exercises, etc. But this is just my opinion. I am representing myself in answering this comment. Before we even start doing mindfulness in our schools or in our institutions, I think it is important na tignan po muna natin yung mga structures sa ating workplaces at sa ating schools. Ano ba yung mga structures na ito? Ito yung mga policies. Ito yung mga schedules. Ito yung mga factors that actually causes us mental health stress or mental health issues. Kasi parang kung hindi kasi natin titignan itong mga structures na ito, nagmumukhang band-aid solution si mindfulness. For example, sa workplaces po, magba-mindfulness webinar, sabi nga ni Dr. De La Rosa, kaliwat kanan. Oo nga kaliwat kanan, pero hindi naman natin inaayos yung pagpapahinga ng ating mga empleyado. Magpapahinga, sasabihin, sige mag-leave ka, pero may trabaho pa din. Ini-expect pa rin mag-deliver ng trabaho. Hindi po ba nakaka-stress po yon? Kaya po, hindi kailangan tignan natin ang structure. Sa mga eskwelahan naman, sasabihin natin bakit masyadong mentally stressed ang mga students natin. Balikan po natin ang ating curriculum at requirements sa mga students natin. Hindi po ba masyado pong siksik ang ating mga curriculum? Na kailangan po dapat ang mga teachers ay marunong magdisenyo ng mga instruction nila para masiguro na natatarget nila ang kanilang mga learning outcomes in 1 or 2 sessions, not requiring the students to be in the school all the time. Because tandaan po natin, ang pagbiyahe pa lang po sa eskwelahan, lalo na kung nag-aaral ka sa Maynila, stressful na rin po yun. So, these kinds of structures, including schedules, policies, kapag hindi po natin ito tinignan muna, baka po yung mindfulness po na yan ay maging band-aid solution rather than a real solution to our mental health, no? Whether you are at work or whether you are in school po. So, before po tayo mag-infuse ng mga mindfulness activities, which I am not against wag niyo pong isipin na I am against. Kailangan lang po nating maging critical at maging intentional kapag po tayo ay nag-i-infuse. Kasi po baka po pag nag-infuse tayo ng mindfulness, maging dagdag ito sa siksik ng curriculum or maging dagdag ito sa dami na ng trabaho po natin. Kaya po, recently po nagkaroon kasi kami ng mental health landscaping sa aming institution at parang ang ibang mga comments paano akong sasali dyan sa webinar na yan, ang daming trabaho. Parang ganun po, So, instead na naka-benefit po sila sa webinar on mental health, hindi po nila nagawa dahil nga po the structures are not allowing them. So, yun po ang aking comment dyan. Ito po ay personal at opinion ko lamang po.
Salamat, Dr. C.
Can I add something to that as well?
Sige po, Dr. Martinez.
Now, when you talk about infusing mindfulness, you need to clarify, do you want to infuse mindfulness as part of a concept or as part of a skill set that you want your student to be practicing later on when they become professionals? So, infusing it and learning it is actually different than practicing it and doing it in actual. So ano ba yung end goal nyo na gustong gawin? Just learn mindfulness or you want the learners to actually practice it? Because as what Michael has already emphasized, for mindfulness to be able to be practiced, the structure and the framework must allow it to happen. For example, in college education, I'm speaking from my perspective as a nurse, educator, and academician. We have a lot of courses at the moment. Our current curriculum offers a lot of courses at the moment, and sometimes when we try to, we are actually teaching mindfulness. But again, the same concern ang nabaverbalize ng mga student is how can we practice it if we do not have the time to do it? We know it. We know the concept. We know how to do it, but we cannot practice it simply because time would not allow us to do it. Kasi nga yung framework and structure is not conducive for it to be done. Imbes na magpapahinga sila, gagawa pa sila ng requirements. Saan mo ngayon ipapasok yung mga practices for mindfulness? Makikita mo ang schedule nila araw-araw, gigising, attend, skills lab, uwi, gagawa ng requirements, tulog. Yung mga ganong concern na paulit-ulit lang. Again, for it to become effective as much as we want it needs the structure and the framework must allow it to happen. So bago natin siya, pwede natin siyang infuse, yes, but for it to be more effective and magamit talaga ng students and the learners, yung structure and framework must be revisited first.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez, for the rejoinder. Due to the interest of time, I will ask a last question to our panel. I think it's a good ending discussion is from this question. Some people would say that we are encouraging softness with all the emphasis on mental health. How do we foster mental toughness? So I think ito na rin po siguro yung ating last message from our panel. So any one of you can start po.
Okay, can I start?
Yes, Dr. Martinez.
Okay. Now, I don't know where the idea of being aware of who you are, how you're feeling, being aware of your vulnerabilities. I don't know kung saan siya nanggaling at na-equate natin siya sa softness. Maybe in one of our experience in our life as we are being brought up by society, na-relate natin na kapag nag-verbalize ka ng inyong vulnerabilities, it is a sign that you are soft. Actually, it's not. What we need to understand is if you are well aware and mindful of who you are, how you're feeling at the moment, and how your feeling affects how you decide at the moment, you are not actually soft. You are tough. It actually takes courage to accept the reality that you are vulnerable. It is more easy and less difficult to just say that you're okay and you are not vulnerable. But it takes a lot of courage to accept that you are vulnerable at this point in time and you need help. So it takes a lot of courage, and by that alone, you are actually tough. Okay? Being aware of who you are, your feelings, is not a sign that you are weak or that you are soft. You are actually strong because, again, it takes a lot of courage to know how you are feeling and to accept the reality that you are not perfect and you will never be. And that there will be times that you will feel vulnerable and that it is okay to ask for help.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. From our other experts, Dr. C.
Okay. I will try to answer this, yung sinasabing softness and toughness. I think I really like what Dr. De La Fuente mentioned about expressing your emotions or identifying your emotions whenever you feel mentally stressed. I think that's very helpful. I think this question is valid naman as saying na kapag ikaw ay in touch with your emotion, ay nababansagan ka ng you're soft, and when you don't, or when you are parang acting tough, medyo hindi ko rin kasi maunawaan saan siguro nanggagaling ito. But I think regardless of how you present yourself, kasi nga sabi nga ni Dr. Martinez, iba-iba naman ang take ng bawat isa or iba't iba ang response ng bawat isa when it comes to stress. Yung iba talaga hindi halata, hindi mo mahahalata. Yung iba very sensitive, should I say that term na, very sensitive. Masyado kasi silang in tune sa kanilang emotions. And siguro, iwasan lang, comment ko lang to, no? Iwasan nating mag-create ng binaries or siguro iwasan nating mag-label on other people saying na masyado ka namang sensitive or masyado ka namang ang ano mo naman, ang tibay mo naman, hindi ba dapat ganito yung nararamdaman mo? Let that person say his or her own emotions and identify it for themselves. Hayaan mo sila. At I think yung sinabi namin doon sa lecture is listen. Important yung makinig kaysa yung magsabi. Kasi otherwise, kapag minsan nalilabel natin yung pakiramdam ng iba, maaari kasi itong makonsider na gaslighting. Isa itong form of workplace bullying. na nakakadagdag sa mental stress ng mga tao. Ibang topic na yon, pero kailangan ko lang yan i-let out kasi mahirap tayong, kasi parang nalilabel no, na soft ka or tough ka. Siguro iwasan po natin ito, especially kapag may mga kasama po tayo nakakaranas no, ng mga mental health concerns. Whether nakikita at halata ito o hindi. No? So listen to the person and let the person identify their own emotion and empathize. Kung hindi mo kayang mag-empathize, makinig. Kung ikaw naman ay hirap mag-process at mag-respond, unawain para maiwasan yung further strain no, doon sa person. That's my comment po on that particular comment. Thank you, Dr. Dalmasio.
Thank you, Dr. C, Dr. De La Fuente, or Dr. De La Rosa.
May I? So what I'll say lang is, alam naman natin, may generally accepted standards that what is expected behavior per age group. You can be classified as soft if you are not able to do what is expected of your age and station in life, 'di ba? Halimbawa, estudyante ka, uunawain ka, oo, pero meron pa ring inaasahan sa'yo na output, 'di ba? So, binabalansin natin ang being soft and understanding and considerate to fostering resilience, 'di ba? So, merong mga may limitasyon, may limit setting tayong tinatawag, 'di ba? Pwede nating pagbigyan to a certain extent. Pero mayroon ding mga expectations na basic minimum. So I think that's an objective way of addressing the definitions. Na hindi ka bato or insensitive pag mayroon kang pinasubmit kasi kailangan 'yon. Pero bato ka kung hindi mo inurong man lang ng konti, 'di ba? Yung pa rin ang isasubmit, iurong mo lang ng konti. So I think that's a way of operationalizing how we can apply this. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. De La Fuente. And last but not the least, we would like to hear from Dr. De La Rosa.
Thank you, ma'am. Hearing them, I believe this is an application also of perspectives of Psikolohiyang Pilipino. So, perhaps it might be considered as a personality trait that it determines how you will perform consistently despite the stresses, despite the pressure. And if you will be reading researches regarding mental toughness, it is somewhat related to qualities of your character, resiliency, grit, and even perseverance. So I believe mental toughness may be also associated with the traditions, with culture. Dr. Martinez will agree to me on that. And perhaps it's really an individual understanding. Like, my toughness may not be exactly or equated to your toughness. But at the end of the day, it's your ability to perform consistently as long as it gives you more productivity in your day-to-day living. So in that sense, I think mental toughness may be encouraged, may be used for, but at the end of the day, it will always be on the understanding and self-awareness of the individual. That will be all. Thank you.
Salamat, Dr. De La Rosa. Napakaganda po ng sagot ng ating mga experts sa katanungan tungkol sa softness at toughness. At narinig na rin po natin sa kanila ang kanilang message, ang kanilang last message para sa ating lahat tungkol sa usapin natin ngayong umaga, tungkol sa kalusugang pangkaisipan. So, although umiinit pa lang ang ating usapan, kapos na po tayo sa oras. So unfortunately, we'll have to end our open forum at this point. Pero wag po kayong mag-alala. We have collected all the questions in the chat box and we have requested our experts to answer them. And some of them have already written their answers to your questions in our chat box. Thank you to our experts. But before we end our program, we would like to have Dr. Marieta Banyas Sumagaysay, the Executive Director of the NRCP, for her closing remarks. Doc Mayet?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Michael C. and Dr. Rudolph Seymour Kirby Martinez. We heard you loud and clear, and we also hope that the proposals you have put forward, urgent as they all are, as we are continuously battling with more daily stresses in life, will promptly get to the doorsteps of our policymakers and program development planners and decision makers. Yes, every person is unique, which means different individuals may react and be affected differently given the same situation, whether these are coming from any or more triggers mentioned by Dr. C and Dr. Martinez, such as developmental, situational, health and illness related, and organizational. On a personal note, as a gender advocate, we can even add to the analysis and mainstream gender into the mental health discourse, whether due to genetics or societal upbringing or to cultural stereotyping, there are gender differentials related to mental health. Hence, we will need gender specific measures to address the practical and strategic gender needs. The National Research Council of the Philippines takes pride in our experts like Dr. C and Dr. Martinez, whom you have heard today. They provide the science and the evidence to concerns of national interest like mental health, which is an urgent, pressing, and a heightening issue day by day, not only at the individual level, but also at the community level. We sincerely thank Dr. C and Dr. Martinez for clearly defining and describing the role that government can play in the promotion, prevention, and intervention on mental health problems. I agree with our health experts today that RA 11036 or the 2018 Mental Health Act will need revisiting and a review. I believe that it must particularly include provisions that are pandemic specific as experienced by the 2020 COVID-19 incidents. On that part on social stigma, breaking it is one big challenge. Pag sinabing pupuntang kaibigan mo sa psychiatrist or to a mental health professional to get counseling, iba na ang ibig sabihin at naiisip ng karamihan. May katok, malapit na mag-suicide, on the verge of mental breakdown, salita ng salita sa sarili, and hindi na makausap ng matuwid. Remember, Dr. C and Dr. Martinez remind us that promoting mental health does not happen when one is sick, but likewise, going to the health professional is advised when we are also well and good. Today, we sincerely thank our reactors for their insightful and enlightening ideas which add to our packet of mental health promotion evidences ready to be offered to our policymakers in aid of science-based legislation. Thank you, and we are honored with your presence, Dr. Evangeline de la Fuente, Chief of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine of UP Manila, and Dr. Renel de la Rosa, the National President of the Filipino Mental Health and Psychiatric Nurses Society, Incorporated. The Council may bring to the 19th Congress our NRCP experts on mental health, and we are looking at Division 3 to lead us on this. Thank you to our energetic Chair of the Medical Sciences Division, Dr. Leslie Dalmasio, who also sits as NRCP Vice Chair. In a related matter, the NRCP has funded quick studies under the KTOP R&D program or Kapakanan ng Tao sa Oras ng Pandemya, which looks into the social dimensions of the pandemic. To name three, we had Dr. Elizabeth De Castro, who mapped the psychological support services in the country, and the tableau is available in the NRCP website. We also had one study by Dr. Meredith Labarda of Region 8, who looked into the effect of a prolonged community lockdown on mental health. And we also had the study of Dr. Cecilia Conaco on the feelings, cognitions, and behavior of men and women during the onset of the pandemic in 2020. As Dr. C and Dr. Martinez emphasized, mental health is a community concern. Every one of us, therefore, has a role and a stake to seek help rather than hide the illness, to provide the science rather than to believe the neighbor's bolang kristal, to educate the community and initiate formative activities. We surely would want the statistics to get brighter. And may I end by saying, maginhawa ang buhay sa siyensya at kultura. Godspeed to all.
Maraming salamat, Doc Mayet. Napakagandang closing message para sa ating talakayan ngayong umaga. Paulit-ulit naming sinasabi, very relevant at timely ang ating topic ngayong umaga. And indeed, very relevant at timely naman talaga. At maraming salamat, of course, sa ating experts at sa ating mga reactors, to the members of our panel this morning. Napakaganda ng ating naging talakayan, scientific at real talk na magkasama. So, before I formally end this session of experts class, siguro ang ating mga takeaways dito sa ating webinar ngayong umaga ay we are striving to end the stigma related to mental health through better understanding of mental health. At sana iyon po ang aming naibigay ngayong umaga, better understanding of mental health. And of course, gusto ko rin pong i-emphasize yung fostering resilience among our youth, among our fellow Filipinos, fostering that resilience through social support and through creation of appropriate mindfulness activities or mindfulness programs in different institutions. And of course, these programs are better implemented through an interdisciplinary intervention. So, dito na po nagtatapos ang ating programa. Huwag po muna kayong bibitaw. Pagkatapos po nito ay magpipicture pa po tayo. But from all of us here at the National Research Council of the Philippines, again, we'd like to thank our reactors, Dr. Evangeline De La Fuente and Dr. Ronel De La Rosa, and our featured experts, Dr. Michael C. and Dr. Kirby Martinez. I am Dr. Leslie Dalmasio. Magkita po tayo next week para sa isa pang episode ng Experts Class.